after Ricardo. I'll try my best. English is not my best language. I'm really sorry for this. I would love to talk with you, but I need to read because I don't manage English so well. And I will try, when you guys saw the photos here, I will try to talk about this experience, more what we went through and what we might go through in the next period, to the future. What is the meaning of these photos that Ricardo showed, right? But first of all, I could not begin my intervention without denouncing and demanding justice of the victim of the largest police massacre in Brazil history, which occurred on October 28 in Rio de Janeiro last week. A brutal portrait of the capitalist barbarity of this century, but also Brazil's own social formation, built upon the blood of indigenous, black, and working people. Well, to begin with, it's unquestionable that delivery app workers represent a new important and growing segment of the working class, a new type of service proletariat of the digital era that Ricardo talks about a lot with precision, both in Brazil and globally. In Brazil, this category has become the 7th fastest growing in recent years, reaching a historic contingent of approximately 500,000 workers, a number recorded for the first time in the last census by IBGE, Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics. The first important definition here is that the struggle of this category, of which I'm proud to be part, categorically demonstrates that over the past 5 years, from the first mobilizations to the most recent ones, what clearly emerged is the accumulation of concrete experience of mobilization and organization that unfold into a complex, ultra-progressive and contradictory process of the subjectivity of this new proletariat. In my assessment, it represents a significant advancement in terms of the subjectivity of the category, forged in a daily processes pre-Fordist working conditions from the 18th and 19th centuries. These are accompanied by strong demonstrations of strength during strikes and also permanent and intuitive solidarity. This is expressed in what some call dead labor time, which I prefer to call unpaid working time, as a way of alleviating the suffering and daily adversities imposed by platform companies in Brazil and all around the world. The second important definition is that this process should be understood as a central part of a purposeful restart of the historical experiences of struggle of the exploited and oppressed, now with the national international protagonism of a new proletariat linked to the service sector of the current digital era. This combined in a dialectical pair on an ultra-contradictory process, hyper-technological development with elements of social barbarism and violent decomposition of working conditions that Ricardo called here the combination with archaic and modern. The third definition, elementary but fundamental, is that platform companies have in no way diminished the underlying dynamic of labor resistance. On the contrary, what we observe is the emergence of this new proletariat that on daily basis embodies a dramatic intensification of the capital-labor contradiction. It transforms subjection to the most violent imperatives of capital not into passivity, but into insurgent process that challenge the traditional mediations of union and political representation. Thus, this new collective subject repositions living labor, hyper-controlled, precarious, but still creative, in the sense of continuing to be the only source of value in capitalism and producing social forms, meanings, and historical possibilities of resistance as a critical nucleus of the capitalist mode of production. It drives concrete process of union and political re-articulation and of direct confrontation with the neoliberal or ultra-liberal rationality in the so-called platform capitalism version. On March 31 and April 1st, that Ricardo talked about, this year 25, delivery workers, we held another national strike, that so-called breque dos apps. Breque is break. So the idea of breaking or stopping the algorithm, of stopping the companies, right? A name that was chosen in the early months of 2020 through a form sent via WhatsApp to all regions of our country when we organized the first historic strike of the category in Brazil. This latest break strike reflects a continuation of mobilizations that began that year with successive editions until 2023. We strike every single year, more than one time from 2020. For us, in the National Command, a unite front of the category formed to organize this year's strike, we estimate that the strike had a participation in over 100 cities across at least 20 states in Brazil, from north to south, making it the largest in the history of our category in Brazil and perhaps in the world. Here, a digression is necessary. 2024, the last year, was the only year without a strike by the category, due to the maneuver of the Lula government, which created a working group to discuss a supposedly positive regulation. In practice, it was a strategy to contain mobilization, resulting in an employer-driven project that would have institutionalized modern slavery, a term increasingly adopted by delivery workers. Logically, this project was rejected by us, by the category, which undoubtedly contribute to our largest strike on this year. It's also worth mentioning that in Brazil, April 1st, like in the US, here I think so, is known as April Fool's Day, and was intentionally chosen as the strike date, suggested by my comrade Rosildo from Sorocaba in São Paulo, in one meeting that we had. The choice, for me, reflects a growing political awareness within the category, which by choosing this date exposed, with irony, the abyss between the discourse of innovation and the world of work and the concrete reality of super exploitation lived on the streets. Thus, the 2025 strike this year not only marked the largest mobilization in the category history, but also consolidated an intense and decentralized process of organization. More than a reaction to economic grievances, it positioned delivery workers as a key force in the contemporary class struggle, revealing both the possibility and the contradictions of future organizing. In São Paulo, the strike left no doubts about the concrete historical scale of this mobilization. It was a true explosion of delivery workers in the largest city of Latin America, which also concentrates the largest share of delivery workers in the country. Among more than 3,000 motorcycles and bicycles, we first headed to Avenida Paulista, a historical, financial, tourist, and protest center, and then to the front of iFood's headquarters, a company that today monopolizes nearly 90% of the delivery platform market in Brazil. Along the way, there was no shortage of fists raised and horns blaring, boom, 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 boom. And I would say how satisfying is the action of class-based chaos, but very organized, it must be said. Let now us address more specifically to the subjectivity this word is so hard for me, subjectivity, you say? Of this new proletariat, the struggle of the delivery workers and its strategic character, nature. The pandemic was turning point, obviously, brutally exposing the structural contradictions of capitalism. From it, and through successive approaches between concrete analysis, direct experience, and practical intervention, we can affirm that we are living through a new stage of capitalism and class struggle. A stage in which the elements conditions historical development, the elements that condition the historical development, intensify into profound and irreversible contradictions under the metabolic logic of capital, or no logic of capital. Yeah? In dialogue with Michael Roberts' reading of A World of Polycrisis, we are dealing with crises that are interwoven and overlapping: economic, social, ecological, and political, with emphasis on the productive reorganization of labor on an international scale and its dramatic consequences for the living conditions of this new type of proletariat. At the same time, however, these contradictions have daily fueled process of solidarity, mobilization, and organization. Like I said, during the pandemic period, delivery workers were placed at the center of the global urban scene as essential workers, but at the same time treated as disposable. If during the pandemic they were celebrated as heroes, in the post-pandemic daily life they became invisible and marginalized once again. The reality imposed by platform, which took advantage of pandemic as a business opportunity, as a laboratory for structuring platforms' work, proved to be a powerful engine for collective revolt. Perhaps the most heard phrase to this day in the pickets and delivery workers gathering is, "We were bad heroes during the pandemic. Today we are invisible again." A rhetoric that expresses sensitive and deep recognition of the category's own class condition. However, our struggle began from the start with a profound subjective contradiction: how to explain and overcome a massive strike movement that still express, less and less is true, the imaginary that being a delivery worker means being an autonomous worker. To address this question, far from the reactionary response of the institutional left, from the old traitors and failed union leaderships, and from the unbearable academic pedantry, we must turn to good and essential Marxist dialectics. We affirm the following: such as an imaginary is constituted by a subject act of negation. But negation of what? To begin with, of the figure of the flesh and blood boss, but all above, of the current conditions of regulated labor in Brazil, in which the minimum wage is about 5 times less what is necessary to guarantee basic living conditions for a family of 4. Food, housing, health, education, clothing, hygiene, transportation, and everything. That is, being autonomous in this imaginary is, in one hand, not having to deal with the boss of bones, right? And in the other, the fear of earning the current minimum wage, which does not ensure subsistence, working 8 daily hours under human, not algorithm, supervision. It's better to be 70 hours in a motorcycle, in a bicycle by week, than to be in this kind of job, in this imaginary. Therefore, what is this desire to escape human management at work from the boss yelling at your ear, if not an expression of one's social condition and a form of class hatred? There is no denying that this contradictory imaginary holds revolutionary strategic potential, and that, combined with national international struggle of our category, pushes far away the fatalistic and defeatist view of many who presume from their office maybe that it's impossible to mobilize and organize this new 21st century proletariat in unity with other sectors and working class. I'm finishing. Ultimately, this word I cannot. I think this definition denies, in ultima instantia, denies the practical possibility of the exploited and oppressed to consciously take up the fight for social emancipation. This denial of minimal conditions of regulated labor of this imaginary, contradictory imaginary, initially walks alongside a more diffuse rejection of unionism. A contradictory rejection fueled above all the previous experience of many delivery workers in other sectors of the economy before being delivery workers with other unions, right? By the exhaustion of the promise of real representation and by the concrete reality of what most of the sindimotos, the union of delivery workers, represents across the country. Over time, the criticism has become increasingly politicized and direct, targeting not so much the union from itself, but mainly historically adapted bureaucratized, and business unionists, which have failed to confront the new forms of exploitation imposed by global productive restructuring. This model has less and less space for conciliation leaderships, given the objective conditions of the current stage of capitalism. In response to this exhaustion, dozens of associations, collectives, and local articulations have emerged through the country. They expressed a refusal of these old mediations and experiment with new forms of organization anchored in the lived reality of platform work, which may signify a new kind of unionism. Time will tell. However, this organizational movement is not without contradictions. Being an ultra heterogeneous field with different experiences, trajectories, and political visions, there are already signs of constitution of a new internal bureaucracy, often guided by institutional mediations logics. Added to this, the current offensive of sectors of the new closed social democracy, now in government, Lula government, that seek to co-optate the movement and subordinate it to the limits of institutional politics. After the 2025 break, the current Minister of General Secretariat, a former congressman from the social movements, tried to ride the wave of the mobilization. He presented the category this year with a bill that labeled workers as service providers and platform as intermediaries. Like we were not workers and the platform we were not exploiting our job, coming from the left and from this government. A complete scandal. In response, we rewrote the bill. I helped rewriting this whole bill, right? And independently, and handed it directly to the former congressman. Oh, here's back, a new bill for you. He presented this bill, but the bill still remains shelved. No fights. But the photos of, I'm finished. But the photos of the minister with the project holding is still going on in the media and the media and the media. The project doesn't matter, is there. What matters is the photography that he has to make his discourse, right? So to conclude, I think what is at stake at this point is the reorganization of working class around the possibility of building a new type of unionism, right? More than economic mobilization, the struggle of delivery workers has the potential to become a political mobilization that challenges the structures of digital capitalism and proposes a new horizon of social emancipation. Thus, this experience of struggle and mobilization of the category, especially 2025 break, represents the synthesis of a process that combines spontaneously, adherence by contagion, recalling here Rosa Luxemburgo and the mass strike test, political maturity, and a series of contradictions and historical possibilities. The truth is that the struggle is not limited to a mobilization for better economic conditions only, but advance toward the construction of its own forms of organization and representation. Therefore, this accumulation allows us to glimpse the strategic possibilities opened by the struggle of the labor workers. Thank you.
We'll do it in the
Yeah, just one photograph.
Send it to me.